and seen the various efforts that have been applied, and therefore I'm willing to apply those in this context. My political experience basically was to serve as the first national vice chairman of the Convention People's Party, and then its vice presidential candidate, and currently its presidential candidate. I stand on a political platform that is tried and tested, one that is human-centered, and one that has proved through the test of time to solve the basic problem of laying a firm foundation for this country. It is on that basis that we in the Convention People's Party are now in a position to lead a new successor generation to offer you peace with prosperity. That peace with prosperity is for all of us, and that is the alternative path to peace, prosperity for a few at the expense of the many. This is what we stand on.
Thank you very much. Your time is up. Next, we have Mr. Hassan Ayariga, presidential candidate of the PNC. 2 minutes, please.
Hello, thank you very much. Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of Ghana, colleagues, presidential aspirants, ladies and gentlemen, and the media. Thank you. I want to thank the IEA for giving me the opportunity to lay out my vision for Ghana. I am 40 years of age. I was born in Boku from the Upper East region of Ghana. I attended Ghana Secondary School like the president. I believe we have 2 Ghanaians contesting this presidential election. I left Ghana when I was 16 years of age because of political dictation, the coup of former President Rawlings with my late father to Nigeria, where I had my last education in Africa. Afterwards, I left for Germany and studied Betriebswirtschaft, it's a German language for accountancy. I went to London College of Accountancy and finally ended up in Atlantic University in Washington. I want to outline to Ghanaians that I believe in the politics of love, tolerance, and unity. As a presidential candidate who believes that Ghana must unite and we must all come together as one nation, irrespective of our political affiliations, to rule this country. I believe in politics of tolerance, transparency, togetherness, and unity. And we in the PNC believe that if Ghana must move forward, together we must work irrespective of our political, religious, and ethnic group to build this nation for a better tomorrow. We must transfer power, as power is transferred to us, to the younger generation to keep up. As the youngest presidential candidate, I believe in youth empowerment and to inspire the young people of Ghana. Thank you very much.
Thank you also very, very much, Mr. Ayariga. Now we turn to Honorable Nana Akufo-Addo, presidential candidate of the NPP. 2 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Jama'a assalamu alaikum. Angula barka da sal. Good evening, fellow Ghanaians. Thank you for this opportunity. And let me say a special thank you to the good people of Tamale for the very warm and generous welcome they've given me and my wife since we arrived. I have very fond memories of this city, since it was where I had my first major success as a young lawyer in a case that I did at the time, which was famous. My name is Nana Dodonko Akufo-Addo. I was born in 1944, 68 years ago, in Swalaba, in Accra, into a family that was very involved with the struggle for the independence and freedom of our country. I went to government boys' school in Adabraka and on Row Road, and then went to England, sent by my father to England for my prep school and secondary education. I came back to the University of Ghana to read economics, after which I went back to England to read for law and became a barrister of the Middle Temple. I proceeded to work for 5 years with a very famous law firm, American law firm in Paris. Gave me a lot of insight into how international transactions are conducted. Came back to Ghana and founded my own law firm. I got very much involved with Ghanaian politics at an early stage, being the General Secretary of the People's Movement for Freedom and Justice, the organization that came to fight the union government concept of the then military government of Kutu Champo. I've been in politics ever since, very dedicated to the struggle for democracy and to establish a country where the rule of law and respect for human rights are respected. I have been 3 times...
Your time's up. I'm sorry. Thank you very much. And our timers, please, we've had a hitch. We don't expect this to continue. Thank you very much. Now that you have heard the introductions, we move to the first theme, which is the economy. And here we will have 5 questions. Gentlemen, you each desire to become president of this country come January 7th, 2013. We wish you all the best. Now, our first question. Can you explain to us in 3 minutes what your broad vision for the country is, beginning with the presidential candidate for NDC, the president?
Thank you very much. As a child of post-independence Ghana, I was influenced by the strong traditions of African and Ghanaian nationalism. And therefore, I believe that Ghana should open its economic opportunities to all Ghanaians, irrespective of ethnic or political affiliation or gender. And so, a government that I head will ensure that Ghana's opportunities are open to all our people in order that they can realize their full potential. It would be a Ghana that utilizes the natural resources that God has so richly blessed us with to be able to provide those opportunities for our people in terms of jobs, in terms of an accelerated economy, in terms of access to social services. We will continue to invest heavily in education in order to create those opportunities for our young people to thrive and be able to excel. We will continue to invest in healthcare to increase access for all our people and ensure that they have quality health delivery. We will continue to invest to ensure that our mothers don't die when they are carrying out their biological function of giving birth to us. We'll continue to invest to ensure that our children survive beyond the age of 5 and even much further than that. That is the kind of Ghana I think we can build if we work together. I will continue to be an influence to bring this nation together rather than to divide it. I believe that united we can build a better Ghana than being polarized and partisan. I also would continue to promote the image of this country abroad, create a situation where Ghana continues to be the model of democracy and good governance, create a situation where Ghana's international respect is elevated to the highest level, and that we are looked at with all the respect that we deserve, as we have since we gained independence first in sub-Saharan Africa. That is the Ghana I have a vision of, a Ghana that stands shoulder to shoulder and stands tall in the International Committee of Nations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No, please, we will hold on with the applause until the end of the first cycle. Okay, thank you very much. Now we will turn to Dr. Sakara Foster to answer the same question regarding vision.
My vision of Ghana is a shining example of what we as Africans can achieve when we manage our affairs well. We have provided inspiration to Africa in the past, and we can do it again if we look to that vision. However, it demands that our institutions work again. And that will be the primary focus of my presidency, to ensure that our institutions work again, to make Ghana work again for all of us, not just for a few at the expense of the rest of us. Ghana must work again, and therefore CPP offers a return to the path of building a self-reliant economy that gives the best living conditions for its citizens. We won't settle for better. We must go for the best. In the pursuit of that development agenda, which we will enshrine in the Constitution to ensure continuity from one administration to the next, which has been a vital missing link in our development, we will be able to deliver free, quality education and retrain our human manpower by investments in the national economy. Then we will enable us to ensure that our natural resources are exploited for the benefit of our country and our people. We will directly and indirectly invest in agriculture to drive the economy and also ensure that our own entrepreneurs are given a competitive advantage in our marketplace by institution measures as far as investment in infrastructure, but also crossing that magic Rubicon, which my two opponents who have been in government have failed to cross. We will invest in the private sector to generate jobs all around the country in each region. Those who say that private sector is the engine of growth, let the market lead the way, are mistaken, because the IMF in its latest report has asked that we review the pursuit of macroeconomic policy alone and the targeting of single-digit inflation, because it causes us to lose opportunity for growth, especially when we are a fledgling economy. And that is why I put it to you and to my colleagues that we must change our path if we are to go towards the vision of our true destiny, a Ghana that is a shining example of what we as Africans have achieved then, what we can achieve now, and what we will achieve into the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much also. We move on to our third candidate, who is from the PNC. 3 minutes, please.
Thank you.
And distinguished gentlemen, I wish to remind you that this is a standing debate, if you don't mind. And you may wish to stand when we have the break after each round. Thank you very, very much for understanding. Please go.
Thank you. Leadership is about taking control of the little resources that ones have to maximize it and make good use to the benefit of its people and its nation. The PNC believe in the leadership, the dedication to the mother Ghana. We believe in good governance. We believe in leadership of transparency, tolerance, and togetherness. We believe that we will make good use of the natural resources that is available to us over the past 55 years that we have not been able to make good use of it. That is why government comes and government goes. If people have been able to perform properly and wisely, I believe we will not be sitting down here looking for a next government. We believe the engine of growth is the youth. And definitely we have to empower young people to be able to build this nation to the extent and to the stage that we want. Education is a factor. We will look at food security, agriculture, where we will bring back Operation Feed Yourself. Ghana must stand tall in food security. We believe that we must be able to feed the 24.4 million people in this Ghana without importing from other countries like China and other particular small countries. We must look at water, where we have situations where every day our school children are going on with buckets looking for water to bath and go to school, thereby wasting the time they are supposed to be in classes, wandering around looking for water to bath. Healthcare is an issue that Ghana is facing over many years. Many years we have many doctors around, yet we are still faced with those problems of minor diseases like malaria, cholera, and others. The PNC believe that if Ghana must stand tall, we must look at all these aspects of life and make sure that the ordinary person in Boku, Bolga, Tamale, and everywhere get health care. We believe that politics of togetherness is something that the talents of all individuals in this country, whether you're a doctor, a nurse, a laborer, a watchman, it is very important to the information and the building of this nation. So we believe that sharing the national cake is not just about giving resources to people to build up themselves, but to equalize it to be able to benefit people in different ways. We want to restore hope, confidence to the people of this country and tell them that Ghana is back and Ayerga will make it work and work and work. I believe that the long-term national development policy that Ghana has and Ayariga has will help us to strengthen our economy and know what we are going to do the next 10 to 20 years so that we do not be thinking of each political party who comes to power will throw away the policies of another political party. So we will separate political power from economic power so that Ghana will stand very tall and nobody can mess up with our nation. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, thank you very much. Distinguished audience, please let me remind you again, no applause until the 5 questions have been exhausted under economy. Thank you so much. All right. Now it is the turn of the MPP through their presidential candidate, Nana Akufo-Addo, to express their vision for the country. 3 minutes, please.
Madam Moderator, the vision of the MPP, vision to which I fully subscribe, is a vision that was outlined a long time ago by the people who began the struggle for our independence and our freedom. What is that vision? That we build...
Excuse me, please. This is the second time this is happening.
Perhaps they want to take away the limits for me, madam.
No,
yeah.
Our timers. You owe us more than an explanation. Please restore the time. No, please. Please continue.
I think we ought to start at the beginning.
3 minutes. Please clock 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. The vision of the MPP, the vision I fully subscribe to, is a vision of Ghana as a thriving democracy, a country where the rule of law and the respect for human rights are entrenched in the way in which we do business. Not only a democratic state, but also a prosperous state. And a prosperous state can come about through only one process. And that is the absolutely urgent need we have to transform the structure of the Ghanaian economy. We have been, until recently, well, right up till now, a raw material exporting economy. There is no future in a Ghana depending on the production and export of raw materials. There is an absolutely urgent and pressing need to transform the structure of our national economy, to become a value-added, industrializing economy. And that is the overarching objective of the MPP, if by the grace of God we get the opportunity of office again. And what is it going to mean? It's going to mean that the Ghanaian private sector, Ghanaian entrepreneurs are going to be encouraged and stimulated to take up the challenge of structural transformation and rapid economic development. To do so, our belief is that the most important single matter confronting our nation is the development of our human capital. How best we build up individuals to be able to participate in the competitive economy that is now the global economy. We can't do it with a population that is half literate and half illiterate. We can't do it. We need to make sure that as rapidly as possible, the mass of our people are given access to all the information and knowledge that is available in today's world. And that is why we're committing ourselves to a radical program of free secondary high school education in our country to make possible this accumulation of expertise and knowledge in our people. We have a very important goals to address, to make Ghana that beacon, that shining city on the African landscape, which was the motivation of those who began our fight for freedom and independence. And I believe that if there's one party which is capable of realizing that vision, that vision of a prosperous, free, democratic Ghana. It is the new patriotic party that has the men and women who are ready to take on that struggle and win it in the interest of our people.
Thank you all very much. We all heard the bell. Subsequently, we'll be using that. The timer is not being friendly to all of us. Please, we request your cooperation in this matter. Thank you very much. I pass on to my co-moderator.
Thank you. Candidates, good evening. Let's try and situate the various visions that you have expressed in the bigger ambit of a national development plan. The 1992 Constitution mandates the National Development Planning Commission to advise the President on the development planning of the country, among other things. The criticism is that the weakness of the Commission is the reason for which every 4 years we seem to take a different turn. What would you do to make this commission more effective? We'll start with you, Dr. Abu Sakara. 3 minutes.
First of all, according to the latest constitutional review, it was recommended that a national development plan be enshrined in the Constitution so that subsequent governments do not have the option of throwing away parts of it. We would review that plan and adopt it and accept it because we believe it is critical for us to have continuity from one successive administration to another. The other thing about the National Development Plan is to examine whether it fundamentally changes the structure of the economy. And this is the heart of this debate today. And I repeat, we cannot change the structure of this economy by pursuing macroeconomic policy with a monetary policy targeting single-digit inflation. There is no empirical evidence to support that. And many of the countries that have made it, to the contrary, have made it because they have spent their way through austerity. They have indeed invested in ensuring that their productive sectors are grown rapidly so that they have a high rate of return to bring money back for use in the services. This we must see in our National Development Plan. Secondly, we must ensure that our National Development Plan speaks to the issue of social justice by empowering women and the disabled so that they're able to make their contribution to our society. We must also establish a universal and socially funded healthcare system that will be accessible to all and maintain it in the National Development Plan. These are basic services that are rights, just as the right to education is, and we must enshrine that also. I am a product of free primary and secondary education. I went to Penby Primary School free. I went to Yendi Secondary School free. And I believe many of my comrades would not be standing here today if a government had not prioritized education and the building of human capital as the essential ingredient of development. And that must be enshrined in the National Development Plan. Just as we must ensure that other sectors of the economy are balanced, taking into account where we stand today and where we want to be. Above all, we must have a process within the National Development Plan that holds political leaders and those in government accountable. And the substance of this debate today is indeed to hold those who have ruled over us over the last 29 years accountable for their stewardship and their performance in government. A National Development Plan and this monitoring and evaluation must speak to that and be able to inform the public without bias.
Your time is up, and Doc, please lift the microphone so that we can hear you better and speak directly into it when you address us. I have a follow-up question for you, so you'd answer that in 1 minute. Will enshrining the plan in the Constitution be enough to ensure that that plan is executed?
First and foremost, if it is enshrined in the Constitution, it is then understood that a fixed percentage of the budget will be spent on already planned and agreed projects. And without that being done, governments are free to leave parts of it. But when it is done, it will be necessary because the Minister of Finance will have to explain why allocations have not been made for the pursuit of certain projects. There will be less opportunity for judgment debts because there will be no cancellation of contracts.
I'll go to Mr. Hassan Ayaga to answer that question for me in 3 minutes. What would you do to make this commission more effective?
In our manifesto, we have outlined the long-term national development plan. And we believe that for a nation to develop, you must have a plan. If you do not have a plan, then you cannot be able to put up any good use of your economic and natural resources. For the first time, the PNC government will first of all finish the uncompleted buildings or projects left by past leaders or government. We will make sure that we make use of those resources to benefit the National Development Plan. The National Development Plan is a process where we believe that it must be drafted out of partisanship. Government, and including stakeholders, politicians, lawyers, engineers, and all other civil society should come up together as a group to be able to draft this plan so that one day nobody sits down and say that, look, it was drafted by the NDC, so it is not properly working, or it was drafted by the MPP. So we will make sure that it works, and we will decentralize the system whereby the plan will last for the next 20, 30 years. That is why we spoke about economic power separated from political power. When you separate the economic power from political power, it gives economists the opportunity to handle the economy without fear or favor that they'll be thrown out of government when another political party comes to power or when his party is not in power. We will make sure that businessmen, investors, students, government, and politicians will use the long-term national development policy to be able to do their businesses and think of what kind of business they will like to do for the next 20, 30 years. Students who are studying in universities and schools will use the long-term development plan to learn or to acquire skill acquisition, what kind of skills they would like to learn for their future career. Businessmen who wants to invest, if for instance we want to put up a train system or a trans system in Ghana, businessmen across the country will now come in with equipments that will help us to be able to bring out these issues and benefit the people of this country. Political power has so much influence, and we believe that if government must separate the economy and have good resources and human resources, then we must separate political power separately and have economic power. I believe that the government of this country has done so much, but when it comes to a new government, then we throw away the investors or the kind of investment we have done. Look around the country, you will see so many silos that have been abandoned by the previous administration of Dr. Hilal Imam and Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. This is Ghana's natural resources. This is Ghana's property. But we do not look at it because we believe that one must say that this is what I have done as a government. It is not what you have done as a government that matters. It is what we do for the nation and not what the political party has done for the people. We want to make sure that we make good use of the natural resources, mineral resources, and the little reserve that we have to build this nation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, you're telling us what you want to do, but you say that you will bring all on board to draft and you will make sure it is implemented. What tools are you going to use to make sure it is implemented? Is it law or what? What are you going to use to make sure it's implemented?
The problem in Africa has something to do with implementations. We do put laws and we do put regulations, but they are not being abided. So we will use external and internal support. That is laws that must be obeyed. And then that laws must be a law that is irrespective of violence, the law that cannot cause violence. So we will look at regulations and possible means of implementing it. And when you default it, there's a penalty to that. And that I think we can do better than.
Thank you. I will go to the NPP's candidate, Nana Akufo-Addo, and ask the same question of you. What would you do to make this commission more effective in its work?
Thank you very much, Kojo. First of all, the Constitution in its wisdom has provided that every new government has 2 years to bring a plan to Parliament for approval and therefore for implementation. So that making of a plan has already been taken care of. We are not going to wait 2 years, as the NDC did, to bring such a plan to Parliament. Because by the time, God willing, we win the election, the manifesto that we have put into place will be translated immediately into the plan. And that plan is going to do the following. First of all, We are not going to abandon any sensible initiatives that are already on the way. We will continue them. Secondly, we intend to use the oil revenues to promote a vigorous expansion of our education and of our healthcare system. We're not going to get involved in reckless borrowing. Debt is going to be contracted only for investments that can create jobs and add value to our national life. We are not going to go produce a plan at the end of which the record, that is the record of the NDC, growing unemployment, rising cost of living, falling standards in education, a collapsing healthcare, corruption, and more corruption. This is not going to be the way forward for Ghana under the NPP. We're going to pay great attention to the issue of structural transformation of our economy and making sure that therefore jobs, well-paying jobs, are made available to the youth, especially of our country. In so saying and doing, if the planning function is going to have real teeth, it needs the proper high-level political leadership. So I've already made the decision in my mind that if, God willing, I win in December, my vice president, an accomplished economist, one of the foremost economists and bankers in our country, Mahamadou Bawumia, who will then have become vice president, will head the National Development Planning Commission to give it that political leadership that is required if indeed the commission's activities are going to bear fruit for our nation. So, holistically, that's the position. A plan that is going to deal with the critical issues facing our country in education, in healthcare, in the creation of jobs, and in the transformation of our national economy, and an institution that is given the highest possible political leadership in our time.
A quick follow-up question to be answered within 1 minute. Is it to be our understanding that once the vice president chairs the NDPC, automatically successive governments will buy into whatever the NDPC has been doing?
You know, one of the difficulties about democratic politics is that it's difficult for you to bind successive governments because they will have their own mandate. That's why the Constitution, in its wisdom, has said that every time a government comes into office, it produces a plan for its term in office. So that's what you can do. And hopefully, if you are able to establish good practices, you're able to show people that the methods that you have used and the way you are going about things is going to produce results, then there's every good sense for successor governments following your initiative. And I would hope that indeed, if the Vice President heads the National Development Planning Commission, and he's seen to have been successful in the purposes of the plan, it will lay a precedent for the future which others would want to emulate. Nothing succeeds like success, and that's the best way we can go ahead with it.
We thank you for your answer. I will go to the president and the presidential candidate of the NDC to answer the same question in 3 minutes.
Indeed, I think there's a confusion in the mind of the NPP presidential candidate in the answer he gave. That is exactly the concern we have in this country, that when political parties leave government, the plans and visions that are instituted are thrown away. And so if we assume that every 4-year cycle, a government potentially could lose elections, it means every 4 years we'll have a new national development planning framework. And that is why the CRC flagged that issue. And so to say that immediately you come into office, your manifesto is going to be put, you won't wait for 2 years. We waited for the GPRS2 to run its course because an attempt had been made to create a stakeholder participation in GPRS2. And that's why when we came into office, we were not in a hurry to throw GPRS2 away. We waited for GPRS2 to run its course before we presented the GSGDA. And so I don't see what problem the MPP presidential candidate
single Ghanaian participates in this new wealth by having the oil revenues fund our education. The gaps that you're talking about, Madam Professor Kojo, are gaps that the oil revenues can fill if all of us are clear in our mind that that is where we want to go. I believe that's where the majority of Ghanaians want to go. And for myself, I'm going to provide the leadership that will allow us to go down that path.
Okay, thank you. Now, your free education program that you keep speaking about supposes that for everybody who qualifies, he or she would have free education. But today there are thousands who qualify who haven't complained about paying. Some have suggested that we opt rather for a needs-based assessment so that those who cannot afford are the ones who benefit from such a program. What do you think about that? In 1 minute, a response before I go to the president.
Well, first of all, I'm not quite sure who you've been listening to, but I've been going around the country the last 2.5 years, and the din that comes from those who are unable to access it because they don't have the funds certainly drown out the lot that you're talking about, in my view. So, as far as that is concerned, there's absolutely no doubt about it, that there is a broad need across all sections, across the sections of our society, for access to education, and they're not getting it because they don't have the funds. People were telling you, my mother had to sell the cocoa farm that our father left her in order to be able to finance my school going. And since then, we don't have any other means of doing it. The issue is there. And anybody who's in the real world in Ghana knows that a great majority of our young people are being denied access to education merely because they don't have the wherewithal to be able to. So a needs-based may be, but whatever be the case, a broad approach is preferable in my view.
Okay, I hear you. Let me go to the president for his substantive response to this question.
Thank you. In our manifesto, investing in people is the first pillar in terms of our transforming the Ghanaian society. And education is a core part of that pillar. If you're building a house, you start with a foundation and then you build the superstructure on it. Now what this means is that the foundation of a house is the most important, so that it strengthens the overall building. You can't have a weak foundation and build a superstructure over a weak foundation. And so when you talk about funding gaps at different levels of the educational ladder, then what it means is that you must put your money where your mouth is. You must put your money where it benefits the majority of your people. 93% of children start primary school. 66% complete JSS. 34% finish secondary school, and less than 20% continue into university. And so it means if we must reach the broad majority of our people in this country in terms of education, then it's at the basic level, which is the foundation of our entire educational system. That is where you must invest your money. And so if there are gaps, we're already spending 27% of the budget on education alone. Get Fund is doing its bit in terms of infrastructural rollout. And so what we have done is to retarget Get Fund in terms of prioritizing, to be able to close the gap at the basic and the secondary levels, which form the foundation at which the children begin. Secondary, technical and vocational education is also equally important now. And so we must also target closing the funding gap at secondary and tertiary education. Earmarking funds is no longer fashionable. And so it is difficult to say we'll earmark this amount of oil revenue for educational sector. But the ABFA receives 70% of oil revenues. 30% go into the heritage and stabilization funds. And so if 70% come into the budget, what you can say is we would increase budgetary allocation to the secondary level, to the educational sector in order to close the funding gaps at the various levels. But we will do what we call targeting. Target our investments to the places where it would benefit the vast majority of our people, and therefore target the funding gap at the basic level, target the funding gap at the technical and vocational level, and in that priority, target secondary and then tertiary education. These are the strategies that we would use in terms of closing the funding gaps.
And I have a quick follow-up question for you in 1 minute as well. At the recent IEA encounter, in response to a question, you suggested that F-cube first before we consider what will be progressively free at the top. Can you care to share with us in 1 minute what the targets that you have in mind are for F-cube first, at least within a 4-year tenure?
I did not suggest. Our constitutional drafters oblige us to. And so they said within 10 years of the coming into force of our constitution, there shall be free compulsory universal basic education. As I talk today, basic education is not free. Parents are bearing some of the cost. It is not compulsory. It is not universal because there are children who are not going to school because there are no schools in their communities. And that's why we've said that we would eliminate schools under trees, provide schools where there are no schools so that every Ghanaian child can have the opportunity to go to school. We're also going to eliminate the rest of the costs that parents bear at that level. And so that is the Constitution drafters' obligation to us. And so any certain president, if you want to obey the Constitution, you have to invest in basic education to eliminate all fees. If you have additional resources, the Constitution says you shall make secondary education progressively free. And we have said we'll increase the subsidy of 50 million Ghana cedis that currently goes to the secondary level by 100 million Ghana cedis to increase the amount of the subsidy.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Let me go to Dr. Sakara to hear his answer to this substantive question. Closing the gaps first before you deal with your plan on the table.
He has answered it. He was the first to answer the question.
My sincere apologies.
But I can have a second go. I can supplement.
Thank you very much for reminding us. Now, distinguished...
Hello?
You have a rebuttal?
Yes.
Please, go ahead. 2 minutes.
I believe that as Ghanaians, we should be a bit serious when it comes to economic and national issues. The issues of education is very paramount to our dear nation. Over the years, maybe some people have enjoyed free education, but I didn't get free education. And I know that for us to be able to implement free education, we will have to consider many, many factors that concerns this nation. Today, currently, as we said, we have many young people out there who do not even get access to education. We have those who have gotten access to education but do not even get the requisite schools to enter. So if, for instance, now we are paying for school fees, and yet we are not producing the graduates that we are looking for, what happened when it becomes free? That is why we are saying that if it becomes free, we will have 1,000 students or 1 million students enrolling in the basic education. And today, it will cost a minimum of 200 Ghana cedis to 500 Ghana cedis to sponsor somebody at the senior high school. So let's multiply 200 by 1 million, and we will get 200 million Ghana cedis a term. In 3 terms, we will have 600 million Ghana cedis. Where are we going to find this money to fund that education? Where will we get that money? Even if we are going to go to donor countries to give us, it will take 4 years to be able to release $600 million or 600 million Ghana cedis for us to fund education. So let's look at things that we can achieve, issues that we can be able to let Ghanaians understand that, yes, we want power, but this is the best way. Move us forward. This is our message. Vote for us. We will do this and do that. But
you want a rebuttal?
Yes, please.
Please go ahead.
First of all, we can no longer wait on some of these issues if we are really serious about wanting to develop. Another 4 years of waiting, which Mr. President is what is proposing, is meaning that another 400,000, 500,000, 600,000 young men are going to leave school at the age of 15 or 16 without any employable skills, even unable legally to enter the job market. You're building a future of hopelessness for lots and lots of young people. What we need to do is to retain them in the educational system and be able thereby to give them some skills and knowledge that will enable them to look at the world with confidence and a capacity to succeed. Secondly, whatever the amounts of money are, if you have your priorities, you will always be able to fund things. Your priorities are education. The money in the budget is there for you to fund that priority. If your priority is paying judgment debts, finding 830 million CDs to pay debts that are questionable, then of course it's a different set of priorities. My priority is to choose to invest in the youth of our country, invest in the future of our country. And it can be done. Others have done it. It's not rocket science. We can do it here in Ghana. And just to conclude, the matter is of the greatest urgency and moment. We can't continue to defer the critical decisions that we have to make to get our population and our country ready for modern economic development, which we cannot do with the population that we have at the moment. Let's be very clear about it and understand that this, for me, is a national crusade. And that is the crusade I'm determined to lead.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, let me just make a quick comment here. There are millions watching and listening on radio. It is unfortunate that we here are not able to respect the simple rules. Let's do our best to respect the simple rules so that the event goes on smoothly. Mr. President wants to take a rebuttal. You have 2 minutes, sir.
Yes. I just want Nanado, my honorable colleague, to...
Oh, it's all right, Mr. President. We've been calling me Leonardo all your life, and you can continue.
to realize that our Constitution provided for the program he's talking about. I mean, this vision that he's trying to make a promise in order to win political power is provided for in our Constitution. Every government president who's sworn in this country has an obligation to respect that Constitution. I am for making secondary education free, but like I said, for a foundation of a house where you have not carried out your obligation to the ordinary people of this country and to the Constitution, to say that your priority is to spend that money to make senior high school free, when you still have not eliminated costs at the basic level, children are not able to have access. Even at the secondary level, infrastructure is not available for all children who qualify to go into school. That is a misplaced priority. You're standing the whole process on its head. We are saying we'll expand access at the secondary level, that's fine, to allow more children to be able to take advantage of whatever reduction in fees we're going to provide at the secondary level. We're going to create new teacher training colleges of education to provide teachers for the basic level so that more children all over the country have the opportunity to be able to pass through the basic and be able to reach the secondary. When you haven't done that, you say, because of a whimsical campaign promise, I will make education free at the secondary level so that a certain category of people benefit, but the rest of you can wallow in ignorance and poverty. That is not fair.
Thank you very much. No applause. No. Please, no applause. And actually, the security was supposed to show some of our colleagues the door. Please, I hope it doesn't come to that. Let's all cooperate. Now, as my colleague said, there are millions of people watching us. We have put ourselves out there. Please let us attract positive comments, and we know we can. Now, I come to my question under the social sector. And yes, I begin with a statement that there are millions of people watching us. And some have concerns in this country about reliable electricity. Businesses have serious challenges. Appliances are being destroyed. And some markets are even catching fire. What can you say to convince such viewers and listeners that under your leadership, their experiences with energy will be much more positive? And I begin with PNC, please. Mr. Ayariga.
Thank you. This question takes me back to the first question. We started with the National Development Policy or Plan. Because we do not have a national development policy for the nation, we have not been able to look at the national development policy for energy. So we have failed in trying to make our energy supply and consumption meet our demand. we realize that we have increased the size of the economy and the population have increased, thereby increasing consumption of power. If we do want to get a proper consumption and distribution of power, we will have to look at three things. First of all, we will look at the solar energy system. Secondly, we'll look at the wind system and the hydro system. In regions like greater northern region, upper east and upper west, we have almost 8 months sunshine. And we believe that we could then use the solar system here to power and give energy to our people in the 3 northern regions. Then we'll look at the wind wheel, where we look at the coastal part of the country, where we can adapt the system of the 3-bar system of the wind wheel, which will generate more than 5,000 to 6,000 megawatts for the people who live around the coastal areas. Then we preserve the Akosombo Dam, the hydro energy, to power areas where we do not have enough sunshine, we do not have winds, like places like Central Region, Western Region, to be able to give enough supply of that area. In that sense, we are able to control the power consumption and supply. Then we go up to build many other dams that will be able to power electricities in other areas. We do have the Akosombo Dam. I believe that if we had a second dam, the electricity problems in Ghana would have been solved. So we will invest heavily to be able to put a bigger dam that is comparable to that of the Akosombo Dam, so that Ghana will be able to consume enough and export some for foreign exchange. Ghana has been one of the countries where investments are going on. And we believe that industries are not able to sustain because of the power consumption and relatively the high price of electricity. So we believe that Ghana must be able to work again by introducing the 3 systems, the solar, the wind, and the hydroelectricity. And when we do that, we will be able to generate enough megawatts and build many other megawatt systems to be able to consume the kind of system we are growing. Today, we have everybody having hairdryer, iron in every house.
Yeah, I'm sure you have a list coming. But thank you very much. NPP, please, and Akufo-Addo, can you tell us about your energy plans?
Thank you very much, Madam. Obviously, a serious program for the transformation of our economy and the industrialization of our country will require reliable energy supply at affordable prices. That's key. It is for that reason that the MPP government in 2008 put in plans to have our installed capacity of electricity generation move from the 2,400 that the MPP brought it to 5,000 within this 4-year term that has just gone by. Unfortunately, the loss of office meant that those plans also suffered a serious setback. 560 megawatts was added to our installed capacity in the Kufuor era. And the plans were for initially 800 more, then another 1,800 more. The 800 more includes, of course, the Bui Dam. These were the initiatives that the Kufuor administration took, which were initiatives that if I had won in 2008, we would have continued. And I believe that by this time, we would have reached the 5,000 megawatt target that we set for ourselves. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened. The investments haven't taken off. Some of the installed capacity that we could use to deal with the problem of Dumso are there, unutilized. There are at least 200 megawatts of installed capacity that could have been brought into play to help us resolve this problem. So the need for the investment in this area is absolutely critical. Unfortunately for us, the one area where we would have been able by now to have developed alternative sources of cheap power, our gas resources, also have been seriously bungled in their development. Decisions that should have been taken 3 years ago, which should have brought the gas project on stream, are now being taken, so that we've had this period of delay that has meant that the gas exploitation that would have helped us able to fill the gap also has passed us by, largely because there are all these quarrels within the government as to who should be responsible for this or that of the gas development. But here we are, gas that we should have been by now using for both domestic and industrial purposes is being re-injected into the oil fields, largely because the decisions that had to be made were all unfortunately delayed. Those are the reasons for the difficulties that our people are experiencing today. We have a plan, and that plan will be to take us to 5,000 megawatts as soon as possible to be able to handle the problem.
Yeah, thank you very much. But this person who is watching us knows the difficulties because the person is living the difficulties. This person wants to hear from you specifically what are you going to do about those difficulties that are so real in the person's life. Just 1 minute, if you don't mind.
Madam, I've tried to say to you that, for instance, the 200 megawatts of installed capacity at Tamale and at VRA, which are lying idle, activated, would help us bridge this gap of poor and unreliable supply. So we have an immediate solution, at least in the immediate short term. Secondly, is to accelerate the whole process of the offtake of our gas. We've had an interminable delay in that matter, and if that had been dealt with expeditiously, some of the problems that we're experiencing today would not be experienced. So that's the other thing, is to accelerate that process. And then the public-private partnership arrangements that would allow us to expand our megawatt installed capacity. These are the measures that we have in mind to be able to deal with the situation.
Thank you very much. I now move to the presidential candidate of the NDC, the president, please.
Indeed, we are dealing with the situation already. Let me make a distinction between what Ghanaians call dumso, that is outages. We have two phenomena. We have load management, which used to be called load shedding, and we have outages. Load shedding is implemented when the amount of power is insufficient to meet the demand. Outages are the common occurrences that happen with overloaded transformers or blasted cables or something like that. So there are two differences. What we're going through currently is a load management or load shedding, if you prefer to call it that, created by an act of God. A ship's anchor broke the West African gas pipeline and knocked out 320 megawatts of our generation. And so it means that suddenly 320 megawatts is taken out of the system. And so at peak levels, our demand exceeds what we have currently. And so you have to spread the load so that it does not take out the system. That's what's going on. That would end by mid-November. The pipeline has been repaired, the seawater has been pumped out, the pipeline is being dried for transmission of gas to begin again. Now, what it means is that there's an imperative for us to develop our own gas resources, which we are doing. Gas from Ghana's oil fields is going to be on stream next year, and that should provide sufficient gas for us to power our thermal plants. We are putting in additional thermal generation to increase generation to ensure that load shedding becomes a thing of the past. And I have said as president, but that by the end of the first year of my next term in office, load shedding will be a thing of the past because we're going to add 820 new megawatts of generation into our system. And we're going to hit that 5,000 megawatts of generation by 2015. And so generation would not be the problem. Where we have to do the investments is in transmission and distribution, which we are currently doing. Things that should have been changed 10 years ago have not been changed. Little parts, components, conductors, and all that have not been changed. And so often you have a blast in the system and power goes out. We are raising the investments and investing in GridCo. We're investing in ECG, changing transformers, changing substations, building new additional substations so that if this substation goes down, we have a backup. And what we're doing is building a reliable system so that it can power this country into the future. The NDC government knows that energy is going to be the driver of growth development into the future. And so we're investing in that sector so that the private sector can have energy at affordable cost. One area we're looking at is renewable energy.